Thank you, Mr. Watson. We appreciate the time you took to come and swear in our board members. Okay, we will call this special board meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, December the 8th. We are about 5 minutes behind schedule. Offer congratulations to Ms. Uggetti, Ms. Wood, and Mr. Carr on their election for the next 4 years on the governing board. Congratulations. We appreciate your service. We will go to item 1.02 off of item 1. 1.02 is a moment of silence, and then we'll go to 1.03, a pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Carr. Would you please stand for a moment of silence?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move to item 1.04. We'd like to welcome all who are viewing the proceedings on live stream, and thank you for staff for your attendance. Ms. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Charles Santa Cruz?
Here.
Ms. Laurie Wood? Here. Mr. Reed Carr?
Here.
Ms. Sheila Uggetti? Here. Ms. Jill Humphreys?
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We'll move to item 1.05, and it is a call for a public hearing pursuant to ARS 15903. Any introductory remarks, Dr. McCord, before we move to a motion?
No, sir. Just going to be talking about the revised budget for 2021.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Dr. Santa Cruz, just as a point of order, I may have misheard, but it sounded like you said 903. I think it's 905 on there. If I misheard, I apologize, but just want to make sure that we state that correctly.
It is likely that I misspoke. It is 1.05. And you were talking about ARS 15905.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion?
I move that we call for public hearing pursuant to ARS 15-905.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Any discussion prior to a presentation? If not, we will move to a presentation before a vote.
So good morning, Dr. Santa Cruz, governing board members, Dr. McCord. So today we are sharing a short presentation regarding the revised number 1 fiscal year 2021 budget. Please know that I have staff with me this morning as well. So Ms. Jackie Mattinen, the Director of Finance, along with Pat Donahue and Ashley Miranda. All have been instrumental in creating this revised report as well as the actual document. So to move forward, so this is what we will discuss: the maintenance and operations and unrestricted capital budget details, the teacher compensation grid. We made a commitment last spring that we would update the teacher compensation grid at the revised budget to reflect any changes in average salary that have occurred after all the retirements have been identified. And then finally, we'll do some federal fund details and share some of the M&O budget risks and opportunities, and finally, next steps.
Dr. Santa Cruz, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Ms. Fitz. Ms. Butts, before we start, just could you remind us why we have this public hearing, what this meeting is for? Like, according to the law, we have to, by December
15th, we are required to revise the budget due to the pandemic. Our student counts were significantly less than what we projected in our
Last
adopted
spring.
budget last
Okay.
spring, yes.
Okay.
And so because of that, our stated budget limit on our budget was overstated. And because it was overstated, we were required to revise by December 15th, and that's why the public hearing was required as well.
Okay, this is the first time we're really talking about this in detail as far as this revised budget for this year,
That's correct.
for the 2021.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So to begin, these are some of the notable details that are reflected in this revised budget. Know that our average daily membership, we did anticipate 32,800 or so students. And at this time, the student count is 28,917. So again, we are still working very much on that average daily membership to bring that up, but you can see that the decrease from adopted is nearly 4,000 students, and that's also reflected in the weighted student count. So because of that, our revenue control limit now, going from 213.7 million down to 188.1 million roughly, is a decrease of $25.6 million. Associated with that drop in average daily membership or student count. So note that this whole situation, because of the pandemic, the governor signed an executive order during the summer indicating that school districts will be held harmless to 98% of the prior year's weighted student count. So we are below that, 98% of the prior year's weighted student count. However, this is also reflective of the enrollment stabilization grant, which we will get through in a few moments. So you can see that that's why we had to revise our budget, because of that $25.6 million decline in the revenue control limit. The M&O override, maintenance and operations override, stays the same. Note the budget balance carry forward, however. So we budgeted a little over $11 million on the budget balance carry forward, and our revised number one that we're sharing with you today shows a budget balance carry forward of just under $31 million. That is exactly reflective of the enrollment stabilization grant, which is why a week ago we shared with you the revised fiscal year 2020 AFR. So at this point in time, because we moved $12 million of fiscal year 2020 expense out of maintenance and operations into the enrollment stabilization grant, which increased our budget balance carry forward by that $12 million, along with the addition, after adopted, of the additional carryover of $6 million. That's where we received just under $20 million increase in our budget balance carry forward from adopted. Remember that we adopt in June, and so in July and August, we are making all these decisions regarding spend, and do we want to use some mitigation strategies, move some spend into other funds. All that work was done. That reflects the difference between that $19.8 million and the $12 million that we received from the enrollment stabilization grant. Any questions on that? It's a rather complicated situation. We anticipated $11 million carry forward. With our work over the summer, we realized about a total of $18 million. Then we moved $12 million of expenditures from M&O last year into the enrollment stabilization grant last year, and that's how we received the nearly $31 million of budget balance carry forward. Okay?
Which might become quite important as we deal with the decrease of students in the new budget.
That's
in
correct.
The budget coming up.
That's correct.
So I do have a question if we go back to average daily membership.
You bet.
This is a huge loss. I mean, I've seen declines in our district, but this is probably twice as much as or more than I've ever seen. How much of this is due to the number who are enrolled online? Because we do have a huge increase in students online. And how much is it due to people who have chosen to go elsewhere, or maybe are just choosing, I've heard there are a lot of kindergartners, that haven't enrolled, that parents are just kind of waiting to get through this year, and then they'll enroll their children in school.
So depending upon the day that we look at the enrollment, we are down in true enrollment between 1,000 and 1,200 students. So the remaining loss of the average daily membership is because we have students that are now being educated purely online. Now, we've got some strategies in place that we're working on over the next couple of weeks to make decisions about some of these students so that we can increase that student count. In addition, remember that the online student, the ADM is captured all the way through the end of the school year, through June 30, and it's about the number of hours that they're logging in. So there's a lot of time to catch up that student count for those online students to get the 1.0 ADM, which then at that point in time is brought down to 95.95 ADM. So we've got strategies to bring up that that loss of 3,800 to be more representative of the true enrollment loss of 1,000 to 1,200 students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But that's still a big loss.
It's still a lot. 1,200, 1,000 to 1,200 enrollment loss is still a significant loss, yes.
The highest I've seen, we had 1,500 students one year that we lost. But that was a little bit, we were in the newspaper a lot that year, so.
But keep in mind that this, I'd like to share too, that this is statewide, not
Yes.
just Gilbert.
Yes.
So statewide, there's been a 40,000 student loss across the state. And even a more significant on a percentage basis of even special education students, like 150 or so special education students. So it's been a significant. The pandemic has had a significant impact on enrollment statewide. So the maintenance and operations budget limit, you can see that even though we had a revenue control limit of a loss of $25.6 million, because of that increase in the budget balance carry forward, our M&O budget limit only decreased by about $5.8 million. And then on unrestricted capital, again, remember that we're adopting a budget in June, and we don't know the final spend analysis, et cetera, in unrestricted capital. So note that our unrestricted capital budget balance carry forward is also reflected as higher by $1.8 million. Before I move on, are there any other additional questions on that? Okay, great. So again, the maintenance and operations budget limit decrease, so lower than projected student counts. Again, I shared the revenue control limit. And then the BBCF, the budget balance carry forward, increased due to the revised 2020 AFR, and of course, moving $12 million of expense into the enrollment stabilization grant. So in moving forward, we are recommending, actually, Jackie Manton had recommended to me that we do a budget revision in February so that we can keep you apprised of where we are on these student counts, as well as any other legislative work that might be done regarding closing that gap between the enrollment stabilization grant award and the 98% of the prior year weighted student count. So we're recommending to present that to you in February. We'll have a better idea of our current year student counts, so we can reflect that. And then also in this budget revision, we have a budget in the enrollment stabilization grant for the current year of $18 million. If you remember, we anticipated a $30 million award from the enrollment stabilization grant our award was just under $14.3 million. So the $18 million is no longer accurate. We need to revise that down to the $2.3 million that we actually received. And then we also did not make any changes on budgeted expenditures out of maintenance and operations to put into the ESSER grant, which is the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Grant. It's directly related to the CARES Act funding. And then again, as I indicated, because of all the work we're doing with trying to capture attendance and minutes for all of our existing students, then we do anticipate there will be a budget limit change in February as well. So then moving on to unrestricted capital, again, we did have a fiscal year 2020 student count increase, which we are able to use for our unrestricted capital. Recall that maintenance and operations is funded based upon current student count, but the unrestricted capital is funded on prior student count. So we have a statewide recalculation that occurs in July, again, after the budget is adopted. And we did realize some additional 2020 student counts that helped us with our unrestricted capital capacity for the 2021 school year. Any questions on any of that? Okay. And then this is the detail of the average teacher salary change. If you recall, the governor requested that this grid be added to all the budgets to verify the 20% by 2020 initiative that the governor implemented, allowed to happen, whatever the case may be. And so, again, you can see where the adopted indicated an average salary of all teachers employed in the current fiscal year of $54,884. And you can see that after the summer activity, the decisions that teachers are making to retire, and this was actually more teachers than we expected did decide to retire due to the pandemic. And you can see that there was over a closer to a $500 dollar amount per teacher on average loss due to those resignations. Generally speaking, individuals who are retiring are way above the average salary, which in the fall of the subsequent year, that will bring the average salary down. So that would represent some turnover savings. So we have teachers that are making $70,000 to $80,000 that are retiring and being replaced with teachers that might be brand new teachers or teachers making less than that. So you can see the result of the average salary increase then over the last 3 years from 2018 to 2019. We adopted 17.4%, and after looking at our average teacher salary in the fall, it's down to 16.1% over the last 3 years. However, I want to make sure that it's clear to the public that we absolutely did provide the required salary increases to all of our staff. And so this is the same grid that we've shared with you in the past, showing that looking at an elementary teacher, a high school teacher, and a junior high teacher, and showing what their actual realized pay increase was for the last 3 years. So on average, for teachers that have stayed, so not looking at the whole teacher body, but looking at the teachers that were here in 2018 and are still here in 2021. So you can see on average it's been about an 18.7% increase in salary. We all know that the governor said it was going to be a 20% by 2020. Remember that the governor's proposal was based upon the statewide average of teachers. So even in rural school districts, charter schools, et cetera. And then also on a classroom teacher, and our teacher definition is more expansive than what the governor proposed, which explains the delta between 20% and 18.7%.
Which we included things like librarians and counselors who are certified but not in the classroom.
That's correct. That's correct.
Sorry, I had one more question. Can you go back to the previous slide? I just, while you were explaining that, this little box of explanation, is that on the form or is that something that we have added?
It's
to
on the form.
explain?
It's on the form, yeah.
Okay.
So that will be, after today's meeting, this new grid will be posted to the website, which is also required by statute.
Okay.
Mr. Carr?
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. Ms. Betts, I think your next slide, I think the point that you made, though, and I just want to reiterate, the amount of money that we received was based off of the average for the statewide. Because we were already above average, above that number, we did not receive the full 20% that you would have received it in totality statewide. Individual districts may have received more or less. We received less.
That's correct. Okay, the federal fund budget. So this revised budget for the current year shows again, the enrollment stabilization grant of that expected $18 million. Again, I wanted to reiterate that. And again, we didn't receive $30 million from the enrollment stabilization grant. We were only awarded $14.3 million. So that's another reason why it would be important for us to revise our budget in February so that we can reflect that accurately. And then again, ESSER, if you recall, last year we anticipated using $500,000 of the ESSER grant for last year's expenditures. We opted to not do that, so we rolled the full $2.3 million award into 2021, which accounts for the increase of the ESSER budget from $1.86 million up to the $2.36 million. Any questions on that? Okay, so risks. So we are showing still, we are anticipating still a shortfall because we did not receive the $30 million. We only received 14.3. So we are anticipating a $15 million shortfall at this time. So the risks. We could lose additional students going back to hybrid or virtual. There still are new special education students enrolling in Gilbert Public Schools, so there could be additional increases in special education. Increase in COVID-related spend. So one of the strategies that we used with our schools, we didn't want them to worry about their supply budgets associated with custodial equipment and supplies. So we told them, please don't worry about that. We have already created a separate budget line, which is a COVID supply budget line, that we will be able to allow our schools to use in the event that they run out of custodial supplies earlier than they would have normally expected. Also, as part of the governor's executive order, he imposed on school districts and charter schools a requirement that they anticipate the percentage of their distance learning students. So to explain that a little bit clearer, Arizona Online is an online school, so that's Global Academy. These distance learning students are not Arizona Online students. They are students that are enrolled at our bricks and mortar school, but we are teaching them in a distance learning model, comparable to what we did at the very beginning of the school year. So we had 2 weeks at least of them being distance learned. Every single student throughout the entire school district was distance learned for that first 2 weeks. And then after that, we went to hybrid, so there's a portion of those days that are distance learning. So based upon all that, all those facts through the 40th day, we calculated that our distance learning percentage would be 62%. So the governor's executive order indicated that all the distance learning days will be funded at 95%. So that particular budget reduction has not been realized yet. The state is expecting to put that into our calculation starting in January, which is another reason why we would like to revise the budget in February, so we can find out what our distance learning percentage would be. We were required to submit a distance learning percentage through the 40th day, but the distance learning percentage is through 180 days. So again, that gives us lots of opportunities for the next, however many days are left, over 80 anyway, to decrease that distance learning percentage and therefore decrease the adjustment down in our budget capacity. So it's a funny imposition, I thought. Any questions on that? We will share that in our future monthly budget updates for all of you guys. And then the other risk is there's no additional funding to close the gap to 98% of last year's weighted student count. So we have not received any confirmation that we would, or nor any certainty that we would not, but it still represents a risk. Any questions on that? Okay, great. And then finally, these are opportunities. So increasing student count in the current year, I indicated that Global Academy, as well as Technology Services, and Joanna Catanzaro, our student count specialist in finance, are all working very hard to maximize the student counts. There is an opportunity to request legislative budgetary help to close that gap between the 98% funding associated with last year's weighted student count. Scrutinizing vacant positions to assess need to fill. We are looking at that this week, actually. Utilizing cash funds. That's always an opportunity we have to move some expense out of M&O and put them into some of our cash funds, such as Medicaid or E-rate, some of those funds. Transfer capital to maintenance and operations. Again, I indicated that our carryover increased by $1.8 million. Right now, we are scrutinizing all requests for unrestricted capital to keep at least a balance of $1.5 million, just to make sure that we have additional flexibility as we complete the current fiscal year. Again, vacancy savings, I shared with you the change in the average salary. That's not vacancy savings, it's turnover savings. We have one FTE that has a lower value now than it did when we did the budget. So those are opportunities. And then always we do realize unspent budgetary dollars primarily at our departments. As an example, fuel costs could possibly decrease in transportation. Then we are able to realize those savings as well. So we are scrutinizing all those major buckets at this point in time. So now, next steps, monitor JLBC and OSPB revenue projections. So JLBC is the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. OSPB is the Office of Strategic Planning and Budget. That's out of the governor's office. Continue monitoring the legislative process as we enter into the legislative session starting in January. Continually update monthly financials to reflect this budget revision. We will do that in our next November monthly report, which we will share with you next week. Present December. No, it would be the November 30th. Yeah, November, as of November 30th, that we'll share with you in December. And then present for approval revised budget number 2 in February, and continue current year and new year budget updates. So we are, if you have any questions, staff is here to be able to help me as well.
Board members, anything there? I intentionally wanted to do the presentation before we took a vote on the public hearing. Is there anything additional you want to ask or make comment about?
I just wanted to make a comment. I know this is really complex. School finance is really complex, and I really appreciate the hard work of the whole finance team in scrutinizing our budget, making sure that we're, using it wisely and presenting it as well as we can to our community. It is very complex because our money comes from different places and has different restrictions on it, and it's going to be a challenge. the money is only a means to educate the student. We care about the students, but if we don't have funds to educate them, if we can't pay a teacher, or we can't buy supplies, or we can't pay for their classroom, then we're really struggling. So I know we talk a lot about the budget, but it's not because the budget is utmost in our minds. It's because it's a means to an end of educating our students.
Anyone else? If not, then we will vote on item 1.05, which is the call for the public hearing. We've had that before we move to item 2. All those in favor of the call for the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 2 is the public hearing, and item 2.01 is a request to speak regarding FY 2021 Budget Revision 1, and I don't believe we have any requests to speak. We'll move to item 2.02, adjournment of the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Humphries. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Any discussion? Seeing that there is none, then we will call for a vote on adjourning item 2.01, the public hearing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We have item number 3 is an action item, 3.01, FY 2021 Budget Revision Number 1. Dr. McCord, any introductory remarks?
No, sir, just that appreciate our finance department, Ms. Betts and company, and thank you for the presentation. This is a tricky year when it comes to finances, and I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job, so thank you.
Echo that comment. We are going to be doing some real complex calculations in the next few months as we try to recover money and reallocate money where we need to. So we are at item 3.01. Is there a motion?
So I move that we revise our 2021 budget number 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Any comment? Seeing that there is none, then we will vote on item 3.01, FY 2021, Budget Revision Number 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0. We are at item 4, which is adjournment of this special board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Uggetti. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Typically, no discussion on adjournment. We will take a vote on item 4.01, adjournment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the same. We are adjourned, and we move to policy meeting.